After Saudi Arabia's two apparent panic moves in just 2 days, a top oil official has now stepped forward with a big claim about the scale of the crisis, trying to reassure markets while underlining the severity of the situation. The Saudi Aramco CEO has publicly revealed the impact of the Hormuz shutdown, warning that the disruption is hitting global energy flows in a way no producer can easily offset. According to his estimate, around 1 billion barrels of oil supply have effectively been lost due to the fallout from the Iran war, a staggering figure that highlights how deeply the conflict has shaken world markets. Saudi Arabia is scrambling to shift as much of its shipping as possible to the Red Sea, but Houthi attacks are believed to be lying in wait along those routes, raising fears that even this alternative corridor may not be truly safe. Saudi Aramco CEO said the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz is the largest energy supply shock the world has ever faced, arguing that no previous disruption matches this one in scale or duration. Amin Nasser estimated that the world has lost about 1 billion barrels of oil supply since the war began, a cumulative hit that he warned is still rippling through every major economy. He added that markets were losing around 100 million barrels per week at the height of the disruption, according to Reuters, underscoring how quickly the deficit built up once Hormuz was choked off. Nasser made these comments to Reuters on May 10th, just as US-Iran peace talks once again hit a hurdle and hopes for a swift resolution to the crisis started to fade. On the same day, the US president rejected Iran's response to Washington's peace proposal as unacceptable, hardening his stance and casting doubt on any near-term breakthrough. Nasser cautioned that even if shipping routes were reopened immediately, it would still take months to rebalance the market, because inventories have been drained and logistics chains thrown into disarray. To manage the risks, Aramco rerouted much of its shipping away from the Gulf through the East-West pipeline, shifting crude from eastern fields to the Red Sea port of Yanbu so exports could bypass Hormuz entirely. The East-West pipeline links production in Saudi Arabia's east to Yanbu on the Red Sea, allowing tankers to load there instead of navigating the increasingly dangerous choke point in the Gulf. Nasser warned that if disruptions continue into mid-June, a full normalization of the market could be pushed all the way into 2027, meaning elevated prices and volatility might persist for years. He also recalled that alleged Iranian drones had targeted Aramco's Ras Tanura refinery on March 2nd, an early strike that highlighted how vulnerable Saudi energy infrastructure had become in this war. State energy giant Aramco temporarily shut operations at the facility after the attack, according to Reuters, adding another disruption to Saudi Arabia's already strained energy network. The war also forced a temporary shutdown at Sadara Chemical Company, an Aramco-Dow joint venture, highlighting how the conflict has hit not just crude exports but key downstream and petrochemical assets as well. Meanwhile, Iran and Saudi Arabia held discussions on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz even as US talks with Tehran continued, underscoring how Riyadh is trying to manage the crisis on a separate diplomatic track of its own. Iran's foreign minister said he held a phone call with his Saudi counterpart on May 11th to review the situation between the two countries. According to Iran, the two ministers discussed the latest developments related to ongoing Iran-US diplomatic efforts and attempts to revive talks. The call came as Saudi Arabia publicly denied that it had opened its airspace for any possible US military action or aggression against Iran. A Saudi official reportedly dismissed circulating media claims on this issue, describing the reports as misleading. A Saudi official said, and I quote, "The kingdom did not allow the use of its airspace to support offensive military operations. There are parties trying to give a misleading image of Saudi Arabia's position for suspicious reasons," unquote. Riyadh instead emphasized that it supports de-escalation efforts and is backing Pakistan's diplomatic mediation between Washington and Tehran. Saudi officials stressed that the kingdom has never permitted US operations targeting Iran to be launched through Saudi airspace. These denials came even as other reports alleged that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait had relaxed restrictions on US access to their military bases. US officials told the Wall Street Journal that Washington is now actively considering restarting Project Freedom, examining how to resume the efforts without triggering fresh friction with Gulf partners. Pentagon officials indicated the operation could resume as early as this week, pending coordination with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Gulf allies on flight paths and security arrangements. The operation depends heavily on access to Saudi and Kuwaiti territory, airspace, and military infrastructure, including radar coverage, refueling support, and overland transit corridors. The development comes just days after Riyadh briefly limited cooperation over Project Freedom, marking a sharp but short-lived pullback in the long-standing security relationship. The dispute exposed one of the most serious strains between Washington and Riyadh in recent years, highlighting differing risk tolerances in the evolving Gulf crisis. Riyadh was alarmed by a series of targeted attacks on shipping routes and oil infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates, which raised doubts about the reliability of U.S. protection. Gulf leaders also grew uneasy after U.S. officials described Iran's attacks as low-level harassment, a framing they felt downplayed the real-world economic and security impact. Saudi leadership feared Washington was underestimating the seriousness of the threat, particularly in the context of global energy flows and regional stability. The rising tensions triggered urgent calls between Donald Trump and Mohammed bin Salman, as both sides tried to restore working alignment behind the scenes. Saudi officials said MBS directly informed Trump about restricting U.S. military access to bases and airspace, using the move as leverage to force a pause in the initiative. According to officials, Trump agreed to pause the project after consultations with Gulf leaders and regional mediators, seeking to rebuild trust before resuming the operation. The temporary pause lasted only after Project Freedom had been in operation for about 36 hours, underscoring both the ambition and the fragility of the plan. Washington is now reassessing how to restart the mission in a way that reassures Gulf partners while avoiding steps that could trigger a wider military escalation in the Strait of Hormuz.
We'll go a different route if everything gets to get signed up and buttoned up. Project Freedom is good. We were asked not to do that by Pakistan, who's our friend, and didn't want to sign anything to deal market. But I think Project Freedom is good, but I think we have other ways of doing it also. We may go back to Project Freedom if things don't happen, but it'd be Project Freedom Plus, meaning Project Freedom Plus other.
The dispute reportedly began after Trump unexpectedly announced the operation on Truth Social, bypassing the usual back-channel consultations with Gulf partners. Saudi leadership was reportedly angered by the public announcement and the lack of prior coordination, feeling it risked drawing the kingdom deeper into the U.S.-Iran standoff. In response, the kingdom informed Washington that U.S. aircraft could no longer fly from Prince Sultan Air Base, a key hub for regional operations. The restriction created an immediate operational crisis for the Pentagon, which had relied on Saudi facilities to stage airlifts, surveillance, and command assets. Even a direct phone call between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman reportedly failed to resolve the issue, underscoring the depth of the disagreement. The move looks like Riyadh's effort to avoid being dragged into another open U.S.-Iran clash, while still preserving its broader security ties with Washington. Meanwhile, as Saudi Arabia denied opening its airspace, Donald Trump was already hinting at restarting Project Freedom.